App service authentication and authorization. First, remember there are two different things. Authentication is one and authorization is the other. Authentication is the act of identifying what somebody is claiming himself or herself to be. Like if I tell you I am Sandeep Soni, how should I prove it? Yeah, that's where I would probably show my ID card to you. On internet, proof is done with the help of username password. That is authentication. But because I am Sandeep Soni, it does not mean I can do anything. What I can do, what I cannot do. That is what is taken care by authorization. So authentication is the act of identifying someone and based on that identity permitting to perform a particular task or denying to execute that task is what is authorization. So Azure App Service provides built-in authentication and authorization support. So you can sign in users and access data by writing minimal or no code, actually no code in your web application, or of course the same thing is applicable for web APIs or the mobile backends whenever we have an Azure function. So it's an app service feature again which is common to all the different constituents of app service including web app. Yes, it uses federated identity. What is this federated identity? One of these identities you can use. You might prove yourself to be what you are through Facebook account or Google account or a Twitter account or a Microsoft account, or you can have your own identity created in Azure Active Directory also. So actually speaking, this topic will be more properly covered if we are doing Azure Active Directory where authentication is the main purpose. But still to the extent possible, let us try to understand here. So we have got authentication flow without provider SDK, with provider SDK. The application delegates federated sign-in to app service. That means the provider doesn't do anything. Here these are providers, guys. These are all providers. Provider doesn't do anything. It simply delegates it to the app service. This is typically the case with browser apps which can present the provider login page to the user. What will happen is you might have used lot of websites nowadays will ask you, do you want to log in using Facebook account? And the moment you say yes, it will present you the login page of Facebook. And on login page of Facebook, you are going to provide your username and password. Submit that. And then once you are authenticated, from there one response will be generated which will go to our application and our application would then authenticate the user. So server code manages the sign-in process. So it is called server directed flow or server flow. This case applies to browser apps without provider SDK is applied to browser apps. It also applies to the native apps that sign in to mobile apps. Actually, if you are using a mobile application, in mobile application also there is a provision where when you click on a button, one modal pop-up will open. And in that modal pop-up, the page will be displayed to you where you can do the sign in. So in those kind of applications, you can use without provider SDK. But what is provider SDK? Imagine now you are writing your code in JavaScript or maybe Angular. And from there you are directly sending the request to the provider for authentication. So you have to write provider specific code there. So that is provider SDK. The application signs users in the provider manually, signs into the user provider manually. That means we get some tokens actually. Authentication token to the app service. So I go to the provider through code. From the provider I get the token and that token I will give it to app services. Mostly that kind of token is referred as JWT token. So token based authentication is with provider SDK. So two different things. User sign in. When the user is signing in without provider SDK, he gets redirected to this page. And this is fixed. post.auth/login/aad. This is the page which is automatically provided to your web app. You actually are not developing it. App service will take care of providing you with this particular endpoint. And from this endpoint, you then get redirected to the provider page. Post authentication, you come back to this particular page, /provider/callback. That means after the signing is over in let's say Facebook, you again come back to this particular site, and there this particular code is going to execute. Cookie will be added to the request so that you are authenticated with the cookie. Subsequently, you don't have to every time provide username and password. Client includes authentication cookie in the subsequent request. So this is the flow basically. User will sign in. For signing in, app service will redirect you to provider URL from this particular URL. Provider URL will authenticate the user. From there, it will call back this particular functionality, and here you are going to have code automatically generated for creating a cookie which is added to the response, and subsequently the cookie is used for authenticating. This is provider SDK flow. With provider SDK, client code signs in user directly with provider SDK. That means you have to write code, and with that code you get the token. Client code posts the token to the provider to/provider for validation. Client is posting the token. App service returns its own authentication token. Actually, whatever token we get from the client, we post that token to app service. App service generates a separate token, and thereafter that token is supposed to be used in the form of this request header. So obviously this all things make more sense to the developer. If you're not a developer, all these things are happening behind the scene. You don't have to take care of anything. Actually, without provider SDK, you don't even have to do anything. With provider SDK, you should know this. You are supposed to first send a request to the provider to get the token. So you should know the provider API for this. After you get the provider API, you have to send the request to your app service, this particular URL. This URL returns a JSON response which has an authentication token. That JSON response, you have to somewhere store it in memory in your JavaScript. And with every subsequent request, AJAX call, which you are making, you have to add a xsumo auth header with the value of that authentication token. Obviously, this kind of programming is complicated and you have to manually deal with it. And for that, JavaScript or maybe Angular provides certain ready-made APIs. You can make use of it. So let us see now how we can actually authenticate the user. Right now my site is open, right? It's accessible to everybody. So I just go to my site and I click here and it's accessible. Right, the site is there. Now what I'll do is I'll go to Authentication Authorization, and here I'll say on. But even if you just keep it as on and save it, the site will still be accessible to anonymous users. It is still accessible to anonymous users. There is no restriction on it. But what you can do is here change this. You can say what action has to be taken when the request is not authenticated. I want to log into Azure Active Directory. But once you choose this, you are now supposed to choose from here Azure Active Directory, which is not configured. So let's go to configuration. Azure Active Directory by itself is a topic to be discussed in detail later. So that time you'll understand the advanced settings, but right now simply use express settings. I want to create a new Active Directory app. So DSS demo app, or if you already have an existing app, you might choose this, but this is an Azure AD app, remember, which is getting created. Click on OK. That's it. A lot of things will happen in background, but they're all taken care of. You don't have to do anything. Now because the app is created, the app will be created actually by this name. You can then go to this particular app in Azure Active Directory, and there you can configure who should be given access and who should not be given access. That configuration can be done in this particular app. I'm not doing that right now. We are not going into the details of Azure Active Directory for now. But now it's all done. So now go back to the site and again refresh it. This time anonymous user should not be given access. Why it is all good. Let's copy this, close this and open and do it again. Yeah, now the save button is enabled. Click on save. Then only these settings will be saved. Now come back to the portal, to the website. Refresh it. You will see that you actually get redirected. Oh. No, maybe I've already logged in. That's the problem. Let's do one thing. Go to Active Directory again. No, all these are not relevant at this point of time. Let's change this. Come back to see if the changes are preserved. Somehow this did not get saved. So I'm changing it now. Something wrong with the portal. Now it is log into Azure Active Directory. Now refresh it. And you see we are redirected. Yes, permissions have to be granted to the Azure app. So do you want to grant the permission or not? From here I am not going to explain you because this part we will cover in Azure AD. Of course I can say accept. I'm logged in already into my account, so it may not even ask me for username and password, and directly I'm in. On my machine I'm already logged in this account. That's why it has not asked me for any further information. Let's do this more authentically using Facebook. Then you will understand more clearly. I want to have here the option of Facebook. That means I want the user to be redirected to Facebook. See, by changing this, actually we should have this enabled, but something wrong and it's not getting enabled. So Facebook is supposed to give you app ID and app secret, which you are supposed to use here. Now to enable Facebook login, we have to follow a procedure. Here I have documented the complete procedure for you. First thing you'll have to do is visit developers.facebook.com. After you log in, you have to visit. And possibility is there, the developer feature is not enabled on your Facebook account. You'll have to enable it. Simple procedure, you'll get automatically and you'll have to take care of it. So let's say I already have this developer site enabled for my account. So I go to developers.facebook.com. Now here we have got my apps. So here we should create apps. These are old apps which I created. I am now creating a new app. What should be the name? Let's say DSS demo app. Give your contact email ID. It is going to ask you for verification. Prove your identity. And once you have completed this, an app is created for you. That is Facebook app. Like we have Azure Active Directory app, this is a Facebook app which got created for me. You have to add a product here. There are a lot of products. We are interested in Facebook login. So set up Facebook login. That product will get listed here. I want login through web. So click on web. Yeah, you may want to give your site URL and blah 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 story. Whatever, something. Right now it is localhost. Something. After that, certain important things. Here you are supposed to give a valid OAuth redirect URI. So how do we frame that OAuth URI? Whatever is our app, in my case it is DSS demo ds .azurewebsites.net because I don't have a custom domain. So I'm going with the default domain /auth/login/facebook/callback. This URL as it is. Only thing you should change is the highlighted part. Rest of it should be as it is. You copy and paste it here. Then the new rules require you to also provide some more things. Not here, but here you have to do this and it's enough. Click on Save Changes. Now go to Settings, Basic Settings, and here we have to provide a privacy policy URL. You can take privacy policy of anybody and paste it, doesn't really matter. They want just one document which has privacy policy for people to read. Of course, when you're doing in production, it should be more meaningful. For now, I'm just taking the privacy policy and terms and conditions of best.net training. And here actually we have the app ID and app secret. You may be interested in these two. So I copy app ID and I go back to my Azure portal and there I'll give this app ID. And from Facebook I get the app secret. Copy this and in portal paste the app secret. Basically what we have done is we have established a trust connection between a Azure app service and a Facebook app. Facebook is going to authenticate the user and the authenticated user details would then be sent to app service because of this trust relationship. See, for some reason again save is not enabled. So just change this, come back, on, not changing, something wrong in the portal. And now save is enabled. Of course, this should be changed to login with Facebook. You have to save this. And in portal right now, it is in development phase. In development phase, I am supposed to log in only with this account and test it. But if you want to log in with any account and test it, then you can change it to on. You must provide a valid privacy URL. Valid privacy URL. This is valid. Save this actually. Sorry. I haven't saved it. and now change it. Choose a category, maybe education or whatever relevant to your application context. Confirm it. And it's done. So now your app is live. So anybody with any Facebook account will be able to log in and access this particular web application. So let's try now. Minimize this. Open this, let's say, in a new browser. Paste it here. It's not redirected me to Facebook. Something wrong. The redirect failed because the redirect URI is not whitelisted in the client OAuth settings. Redirect URI is not whitelisted. Okay. The problem is we have to also set the redirect URI, which is supposed to be this only, but why is it not taking it? So maybe the URL which I gave is wrong. For my web application, the URL is dss demo db.azure websites. Okay. And then the remaining part I'll take from the notes. This value I should give it in Facebook login settings. Save changes. Here also we should give this. Actually not required. Let's not give this. Recently some specifications have changed. Earlier something was not, this was not required. At least if now required, I'm not sure, but let's test it once. Enter. Perfect. So that URL was wrong. The auth URL which I gave, that was wrong. And you can say continue as Sandeep because I'm already logged in here with my account. I can say continue as Sandeep. And that's it. We are here. Of course, you can do certain more things, like you can go to portal, Facebook, and you can enable certain claims. So you can enable some scope. Whatever data you want from Facebook to be given to your application, you can enable that. And when you enable this, it will show you on the dialog that these are the information which the application is asking for. Do you want to proceed? And when you say OK, all that you can capture, and in code you can use it through claims identity, if I'm not wrong. So system.security.claims.claimsidentity.current or no. Yeah, just look at this claims identity. Using claims identity, we can get the details from that particular user. Details of the logged in user. I don't know the API. I have not explored it, but you can explore the API, run around claims identity and capture that data. So this is how Facebook authentication has to be enabled. Same steps you'll have to perform for Google authentication. Okay, so claims principal, sorry. Not claims identity, it's claims principal dot current dot, you have this, all this identity dot name would give you the logged in name and so on. I've not used it. I would request you to explore further on this particular API on how to capture the claims data which is provided in the scope of a provider. And the scope of the provider is controlled through this section. You have to give app ID, app secret, and request for extra information. User birthday, email, friends list. So always be careful, guys. Whenever you are clicking on such login, what information you are going to provide to the application, you have to be very careful. Sensitive information can be captured by your application. By enabling Facebook login and putting a check mark here, somebody can know your complete list of friends. Because most of the time we don't bother to know what is checked. We simply say okay, that's all. Don't do that. But this is how authentication and authorization without writing even one line of code is enabled on my website. That is important thing to be noted. I have not written any code. Unless I want to capture user details, I have not written any code. So bare minimum code if needed can be written, and we have authentication enabled on our Azure App Service web app. That's all in this session. Thank you.